Good afternoon. We are going to begin our third panel discussion. One of our panelists, unfortunately, has had to drop out. At the moment, we're a small but perfectly formed group, but we just might have somebody else who is brave enough to come and join us. So what I will do is look at that. Look at that. You see that? That's what the Schools and Nursery Show is all about. Just picking people from the audience and saying, you are an expert and you're going to join us. So thank you so much. And I believe you are an expert, aren't you? You're from one of the psychology training centres. Brilliant. So let me first of all get our panel to introduce themselves, because that would be a good start. And I know we met informally yesterday, but please do maybe introduce yourself to start with.
Sure. I'm Dr. Marie Thompson. I'm a clinical psychologist and the clinical director of Vivamus, and we're a team of psychologists supporting children, adults and families.
I couldn't think of anybody more qualified to be on this panel discussion when we get to the topic. How Marie hasn't found herself here already before now, I do not know. Kirsty.
Hello, my name is Kirsty Loudon. I'm one of the assistant head teachers at Heartland. Previously, I've worked in another Dubai school and have also worked in a Peru school in the UK. So a range of experience across the primary phase with managing and dealing with children who might be in the process of a diagnosis of anxiety, or who parents maybe just have some questions about it. So a range of experience in the primary school.
Thank you. And Alex.
Hi, Alex Kilpatrick, Head of Primary at Raffles International School. When I was in the UK, I was also a special needs coordinator, so I've got a little bit of experience around anxiety and this topic.
Alex, I'm going to begin with you then. Let's start with you because you're closest to me. Our topic this morning is, anxiety in children and telltale signs and how to spot them. There's been an awful lot of talk in terms of post-COVID and the impact that that's had on children. But actually, anxiety sometimes is even more basic than that, isn't it? Anxiety is mummy's going to work and I'm being left at school with strangers. The depth and the gravity of anxiety is wide-ranging. What would you say to, first of all, maybe fellow teachers and fellow colleagues about anxiety in children and maybe some of the telltale signs from your experience?
Yeah, so it ranges. There's so many things that, like you've quite rightly said there, but one of the things that I tend to pick up on with children, and I have when I was in the classroom, is changes, subtle changes in them. A child who can be that child who's quite loud or very talkative suddenly changes and they become a little bit quiet, a little bit reclusive, and then you start to dig into it and find out what's going on. And also potential changes in their home setting and situations like that can really have a knock-on impact in terms of how a child feels about themselves, security-wise. A simple thing such as having a new baby brother or sister in the family can cause so much change in a child, and their anxiety levels can just either go through the roof or they just go completely the opposite way. And it's very difficult with children. Each person's an individual. I mean, as a parent myself, we went through a similar situation earlier this year with my own daughter. So I only joined Raffles this year. My children moved to a new school, and my daughter's in year 2, loved going to school ever since she was in FS1. And suddenly now with this whole change, a new city, we'd moved to Dubai from Ras Al Khaimah, she went from being this bubbly, extroverted child to somebody who was really introverted, would cry every morning for the duration of the morning, and it was very difficult for us as parents as well to kind of get to understand what it was. We knew what it was, but understanding how she was feeling was very difficult. And actually at the age of 6, it's very difficult for them to articulate as well these changes and understand the feelings. But eventually, through time, we got there.
I'm sure there's lots of parents who are listening who are thinking, there are things that they've come across in their lives as well. That's a really good personal example. And can I just say thank you for sharing a personal example, because that's not always an easy thing to do in front of an unknown audience. Kirsty, just continuing that discussion and following on from that, what's your experience of what you've seen and perhaps some of the advice that you might give to parents listening today?
I think my advice would be so obviously my kind of first and foremost experience of anxiety is in the classroom. And I think my advice would be really to really understand the difference between what is normal in terms of a child being upset or worried versus what is actual anxiety, because there is, as you said, such a vast difference between the two. And I think with my teacher hat on, if a child is coming in, especially upset on a morning, but they're still able to come and sit at their seat, start their day with a reading book. Yes, they still might be upset or worried about something. That's normal. However, if a child can't actually move on from that feeling and then it becomes then feeling sick, I've got a sore tummy, recognizing those differences is really key. So in terms of advice, it's recognizing those triggers as well. So is there some sort of anxiety around reading? And the more the parent can tell the teacher, the more information that as a professional we know how to kind of regulate that child. And that's a really important factor as well when it comes to deciding, is it upset and worry, that's normal, or is it something much deeper? So self-regulation is quite a buzzword in well-being conversations at the moment, and it's really important that our children do understand how to self-regulate, and that can be in a number of ways. It could be through art, could be through music, could be through just having quiet time, playtime. So that would be my other kind of piece of advice in terms of what can we do to support our young people, learning what are their triggers and how can I help this child come back down and learn how to regulate.
Thanks, Kirsty. Marie, it's a very different world today, isn't it? Because 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago, nobody was having these discussions about children and anxiety. And usually, some adult would have said to us, oh, just, be quiet and get on with it. What is it that's shifted? What is it that's changed? Is it the right change? And what should our approach be from you as a professional, perhaps in schools? What guidance might you give us today?
I think you're right. I think there has been a change in the last 10, 20 years, and for the better, in my opinion. Anxiety affects 1 in 4 of us. So at least one of us here has anxiety.
I hope we haven't done that to you by dragging you off the floor today. I hope we're not the cause of that.
Not at all. That's fine. It's such a common thing. It's always been a common thing, so it's there. I think the shift is how we talk about it, how we recognize it, what we do about it. And I must say it's really lovely to hear 2 leaders within schools talk in such an informed way about anxiety in terms of what might trigger it and how you cope with it in the classroom. And I think that in itself is a huge shift. How we talk about anxiety and other mental health problems now shows itself within leadership within education. That's a huge shift, I think.
I think perhaps the biggest shift is for us to understand that anxiety is normal. It's a normal reaction, just like happiness is, or excitement. It's just another emotion. And I think, Kirsty, you picked up on the idea of self-regulation. For our audience, what does self-regulation mean? I think we know from what it says on the tin, but maybe just give us a bit more depth of how we might approach that process of self-regulation and helping a child to manage those emotions and those feelings.
So self-regulation from a child point of view is kind of what it says on the tin. It's if a child finds himself in a situation that could be overwhelming, say for example a spelling test, something that might be as simple as your child has been practicing their spellings all week. They really want to get 10 out of 10 because you get a sticker on your sticker chart. Now, as a parent, that is so motivating. Okay, my child's going to get their spelling test, they're going to get 10 out of 10. However, when they get into the classroom on the morning, because the child in their head has, built up the sticker, they've built up that reward, they want that self-satisfaction. It might be one spelling that they just haven't, got quite right, and an I's not in the right place or an E's not in the right place, and they only get 9 out of 10. Now, that child naturally will be disappointed, upset, worried. Oh, let myself down, I've let my teacher down, you know, I've let my classmates down. So when a child is in a normal situation where they can self-regulate, they would naturally feel upset and they would recognize that emotion. They would probably be able to name that emotion. They would say, oh, I'm frustrated, I'm upset, I'm anxious that I'm not going to get 10 out of 10. But they're able to recognize that emotion, name it, and then be able to move on, either by they might tell their teacher, oh, I'm feeling a bit upset because I didn't get 10 out of 10. That's normal. Or they might even speak to their classmate. Oh, I'm really disappointed. I really worked hard this week, but actually I didn't quite get there. They might even have to have a more physical response, like getting up out of their seat, going for a walk. These are all ways in which children can self-regulate their emotions and bring their core back to a normal feeling, a happy feeling. Where a child can't self-regulate, that's when we would see of a more escalated behaviour, where they might burst into tears, for example, and not be able to self-soothe. They might become frustrated and they might have more emotions that are angry, for example. And it would take maybe someone intervening at that point to help them start to self-regulate. And certainly at Heartland, we do so much work, and we talk through our high performance learner model about how to self-regulate, because at the core that's so fundamental to children being able to make progress, both in their both for their self-esteem, but also in their progress in their learning. Because once a child is then able to regulate, they can come quickly back to task and they can move on with their day. And as adults, we have to self-regulate morning, noon and night. So that's such an important skill when we're talking about self-regulation.
I'm so glad she works for me. And I'm so glad I don't have to worry about that too much. Thank you, Kirsty. Alex, just thinking about that, about self-regulation, I often think sometimes, and maybe I'm wrong, but a lot of children's anxiety actually comes from parents. They see their mum or their dad worried about something, and then that manifests itself in the child in a different way. The role of schools, what Kirsty was talking about there, in a child knowing how to self-regulate, what is it that we do to help children get to that point? Because there's obviously a skill in that, and also the more difficult question, how do we then speak to parents to advise them so that actually their anxieties are not transmitting onto their children?
Yeah, they're very good points there. One of the things that we do in our school in particular, and I'm sure other schools are doing it because I've done it in other schools before, is we've made a big emphasis on well-being within our curriculum. It's the number one priority within our school. And through the well-being side of things, we are looking at key factors such as self-regulation of behaviour, emotions, but also empathy, resilience, all those factors. But we specifically teach scenarios where a student or a person might suddenly develop an anxiety feeling. And it's a case of teaching the students, giving them scenarios, giving them options about how they can overcome that, or how that feeling might have a knock-on impact in terms of themselves and what they can do to regulate themselves, to find a way that it's not going to allow it to spiral out of control, but also then how they can support students, peers, if they see these emotions and these feelings, these creeping in. Within our school as well, we've got a very good inclusion department and also like a school counselling department who are actively involved in any students who we think need referrals for additional support, shall we say. This obviously involves parents from the very beginning. So whenever a teacher identifies a student who might be displaying signs of any kind of emotional or anxiety or any kind of feeling that's not normally in their characteristic, their traits, a referral would be made. The inclusion department or the school counsellor will contact the parents. Us as leaders as well sometimes will be involved in this, and we'll sit down and we'll have open and frank conversations with the parents. For me, transparency is key. We've got to be clear to them and engage in that conversation. And yes, it might be difficult, and some parents might not know it themselves, or they might not be aware that what they're doing is having an impact on their children. But we've just got to say it as it is sometimes. And then if it's a case of the families need support, then we're there as well to support them.
Marie, it is enlightening, and it's great to hear schools talk about what it is that schools do. And I'm sure that many of the other schools that are here today will be doing very much the same thing. At what point, however, do schools and families come to you for that very specialist support and advice? And what work do you and your organisation do with families and with children?
Thank you. We support schools and families in various ways. In terms of schools, we can go into schools, we can have one of our child and adolescent psychologists within the campus, seeing people individually, taking away the barrier of having to travel or fit it into an already very busy schedule. And we can also support the school in terms of consulting. So perhaps there might be an incoming school counsellor, or the school counsellor's on maternity leave, so we're able to provide that support and mentor and onboarding school counsellor. We also provide training to staff teams, to leadership, on anything from anxiety, self-harm in the classroom, to exam stress and safeguarding. In terms of helping the families and children directly, either people come to us in our clinic and they would self-refer, or sometimes they come to us via the inclusion team or the wellness team, where a particular need has been identified, and we will then take it from there in terms of working with the young person and their family.
And have you seen a change, a spike, different trends, different issues? What have been maybe the key things that you've noticed over the last 3 to 5 years? We talk about life before COVID and after COVID, don't we, of course, as well. So maybe we'll go, BC and AC, as it were. Have you noticed any particular changes or any trends?
Yes, I think during COVID there was very much a discourse, wasn't there, about mental health and the impact on everybody, all of us, and particularly young children. So what we're noticing is, especially in those children who are very young during COVID, there is difficulty perhaps with social skills, perhaps some separation anxiety that might be lasting longer than we might normally expect it to. And with the older cohort, those teens that were missing out on that social interaction at a really precious time for that, we're finding again there not only difficulty in the social skills, but a little bit of a difficulty in sort of regulating that and sort of holding back. There's almost a sense of, well, here's all this opportunity to be out and about, and sort of getting into a little bit of strife that way.
It's interesting that we return again and again to that idea of teaching those skills of self-regulation. And there is a well-being agenda in our schools, which the regulator, the KHDA, have now made part of the inspection process. I'm not sure we've finished that journey. I think we're on a learning journey in terms of well-being. Alex, let's start with you. What does well-being look like in your school, or how would you define it, and talk about schools' approach to it in your context? I love difficult questions.
I know.
They go,
I'm just thinking
the brains and the cogs have to get into gear. Sometimes I just talk a bit longer so I'll give you thinking time.
Well, it's such a broad topic. So for us, it's a case of making sure that the students are happy, they're safe coming to school. That's pretty much the priority for us. And we will hold regular surveys with most students to see, and we take that on board. So if suddenly there is a change in the results regarding student happiness, I'm going to use Year 9 English as an example, then as a leadership team we address that. We go in and look around, what's happened, what's changed? Is it something as simple as the curriculum has changed and they've gone on to a new part of the curriculum and these students are really struggling, and actually now that's impacting their well-being because they feel they can't do this anymore? Or is it something different? Is it, it could be any factors. I don't want to go into too many, but it's a case of making sure that it's addressed, that we are looking at what potential barriers there are, getting that feedback in terms of what's causing any anxiety, any stress, any worries, and then making sure we're acting on it. That's key for us, and it is built into our curriculum. So there is dedicated wellbeing slots all the way from FS1 to year 13 throughout the week, where the curriculum is allocated to wellbeing, so that our teachers are actually delivering sessions around all these key foci points to help the students, I'll come back to that word, develop self-regulation, that we're giving them the skills to understand what it means and how they can move forward from that.
So that's how we're helping the students. Kirsty, whether at Heartland or previous experiences, how are schools supporting parents in better understanding this agenda of a focus on well-being and self-regulation that you talked about?
So I think for parents, it's really important that we have those really open and transparent conversations. So particularly at Heartland, we have a parental engagement sessions, and that can also relieve a lot of anxiety and worries for parents in terms of just that face-to-face time. I think COVID really stripped that away for a lot of us, and certainly as a professional whose front-facing role would always be to be in open communication with parents, it really hindered how I would have to change my kind of approach with having quite tricky conversations sometimes with parents around, are they managing in class? What do they need help with? What can I do to help support further? So I think kind of that face-to-face time is our most valuable tool in schools. So as I said, at Heartland, we have our parental engagement sessions, which is a chance for parents to come into the classroom and have that teacher face-to-face time. Also, we have dedicated one-to-one parents' evenings where you get that more in-depth rundown of exactly what is driving your child's learning in English, math, science, but also particularly in that first term when we have students arrive, it's all about their well-being. How are you? How have they settled? Friendships, and really putting the value on how are you feeling as parents? What is your feedback? Because that's the most important thing, I think. Parent feedback, and then how we use that then can also relieve a lot of parental anxiety, and also drive then parent well-being too.
Maria, off that topic just slightly, I'm looking around the room today, and we're surrounded by hundreds of people from so many different nationalities. And if I look at my school, I mean, we've got 108 different nationalities with no group larger than 15%. Are there different nuances that sit within our different cultures, how we've been brought up as children ourselves? And how does that impact on some of the stresses and some of the anxieties that are facing children today? And maybe just give us some of your professional thoughts on that topic.
That's a lovely question. Thank you. I think in terms of what people come to us for, that is the same no matter what the culture is. There will be depression, there will be anxiety, there will be all the other things. I think the nuance comes from understanding that person's culture, their person's family system, the values within that family, the expectations, because those things are very nuanced and very difficult to stand apart from. So one example might be how you might discipline a child. That's a very culturally nuanced, quite sticky thing to navigate with a family. Because you need to do it in a way that's respectful of somebody's culture and recognizing your own difference, and yet conveying the impact of a particular way of disciplining a child and what that might do for their mental health. So I think, in short, the presentations are very similar, but the nuance and the understanding of that family is different from family to family, and that has huge cultural influence.
I think sometimes, we celebrate the fact we live in a multicultural society, but we actually forget the vast differences that exist between us and how we've been brought up. And, if I think back to my upbringing, small town, everybody knew everybody looked the same, sounded the same, went to the same school, and everybody's parents knew everybody else. It's not until you're in this type of dynamic and you realize that our life experiences as parents influence how we behave as well. How do you support parents on that journey to better understand themselves that will ultimately help their children?
That is key because it's all about the system around the child. It's all about the parents. And I think it's a really long answer, but I'll give you the short version. It comes down to 2 points. One is about co-regulation, and another is about understanding your own triggers, which are influenced by the way that you grew up. So with respect to the co-regulation, when we talk about the self-regulation, which we have done quite a bit today, we're really talking about the nervous system. So when the nervous system of the child is going up like this, it will not come down on its own. They need a co-regulator, which will be the parent or the school, the teacher. And they feed off each other's energy. So this person has to be calm in that moment. They can be absolutely frustrated in their head at this behavior, but they have to be calm in their body in order to co-regulate and for this child's nervous system to come back down to where it needs to be. Now, in order to do that, that takes a lot of self-awareness. It takes a lot of being present despite what your mind is telling you need to do and say. And that can, for some people, it's a little bit of reading into that, and for some people, it's therapy themselves in order to learn how to manage their own emotions so that they can help the person in front of them.
We always think what we know we're talking about in schools until we talk to an expert, and then we really realise how much we're grateful for the special service provision actually that we have in this country, to be able to reach out to professionals like you to guide us. I'm conscious of time. This has actually been a fascinating discussion, and I'm sure that there will be more discussions that come from this. But I just want to, I know that we're being live streamed, and I know it's been recorded for future reference, but I wonder, are there any particular questions from anybody on the floor at this time before we take some final thoughts from our panel today? No, nobody's feeling anxious or even brave on the floor. Marie, let me start with you then. Just final thoughts, and I'll come back this way through our three. Final words of wisdom that you might give to parents who are worried about their children, worried about, relationships, anxiety, change, all of those things that unsettle us in life. Just final words of wisdom.
I think if you're worried about something, whether it's about yourself or whether it's about your child, don't try and figure it out yourself. That's our job. I think if you've noticed a change in your child and you can't quite put your finger on it, but something's different, come then, because we can help you figure out what the problem is. You don't need to know that. You just need to know that something's off, and we'll help you take it from there.
Thanks, Marie. Kirsty, final thoughts?
I think the most helpful piece of advice that I could give would be, as a parent, to also realise that, as Marie was saying, you are that co-regulator. So the more modelling and the more emotional coaching that you can show, the more that will help your child. So, something as simple as a bedtime story where the main character might have a bit of conflict or he might be feeling lost or confused. That's such a really simple, low-stakes way of you being the co-regulator, showing them, oh, I would do this. Let's have that open communication about this, and having that transparency as a parent, I think, is just absolutely crucial in how your child then goes on then the next day, and then they can articulate that as well. So I think that co-regulation and that emotional support would be my biggest advice for any kind of parents moving forward.
Thank you, Kirsty. Alex, final thoughts to share with our audience today?
I think it's okay to acknowledge that anxiety, stress, worries, they're there. They're normal things to happen to anyone. So don't shy away from it. Don't turn a blind eye to it. If your child's exhibiting these signs, that's fine. That's okay. But reach out, get the help that's there, and work with the professionals. Listen to what they advise and actually follow through with it. As a parent myself who's been through this experience, believe me, it's difficult, but actually it makes a huge difference. And at the end of it, my daughter now, who was crying for weeks and weeks and weeks, loves going to school. She runs in, she's happy, and that's because we reached out to support, we engaged with the support, and we worked through it.
10 years ago, we would never have sat in a panel discussion talking about children's anxiety, I'm absolutely sure. And 30 years ago, I would have just been told to go sit in the corner and be quiet. It's so fantastic that actually these topics of conversation are front and centre. And they are very much part of our discussion and dialogue in schools. I am incredibly grateful to all of you for joining us today, especially to Alex and Marie who joined us last minute because some other people couldn't make it. And hopefully that's made everybody feel relatively calm and safe in this discussion environment today. So on behalf of the Schools and Nursery Show, on behalf of all of you, our audience, and those of you who are watching in the future online or through our YouTube channel, a huge thank you to Dr. Marie for your expertise. I'm sure we'll have many more conversations in the future. To Kirsty, thank you for your words of wisdom and practical advice. And to Alex as well for sharing your personal story as well as your insights from your school perspective. So on behalf of the School and Nursery Show, our thanks to our expert panellists for talking to us about something that we all experience from time to time. We have one more final panel discussion to take place in about 15 minutes' time. And that panel discussion, once I can anxiously find my glasses, is all about the International Baccalaureate. Now, we've touched on curriculum throughout the day. The IB is certainly something that's a very different and unique model in terms of its curriculum. And we look forward to the expert advice and guidance and insights that our panel will have with us then. So we look forward to welcoming you back to this central discussion point in about 15 minutes' time. Thank you so much.